So
I know
your coaches.
I'm pretty sure Tamara just had a baby recently, so
She
she's
did.
got her hands full.
Yeah, she did. She did.
Yeah,
And
I actually got to meet Tamara before I even kind of started the process. So I had like a conversation with her, which is kind of nice to
good.
And I'm always like reaching out them for questions and stuff as I go along. So
that's great. That's great. I don't even know if she's back to work yet. Is she back, Ruben? Do you know?
I'm not. I don't know. Okay. I thought she was, but now that you guys mention it, maybe she's not. She does respond to some emails. I know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that was in December or November when she had the so
yeah. All right, cool. Well, whenever you're ready, we're here.
Okay, cool.
Have fun. We could be a room of 30 coaches.
All right, sounds good. Okay. All right. So in order to have the striving to win and the teaching life lessons and put them together, we have these 3 principles that we're going to go through for the remaining time. And that first principle is filling the emotional tank. And filling the emotional tank, we'll talk a little bit more about it, but could I have a participant read this quote for me up here by Maya?
Sure, I'll read it. It says, I've learned that people will forget what you've said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask you guys, do you guys have a specific coach that pops up in your head who embodies this quote?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Would you guys like to share who that coach is and a little bit about that coach?
Well, I had a few come to mind, most of them that made me feel good about myself and my ability as an athlete, and 1 or 2 that made me feel not so good about, myself, and made me wonder if I should keep playing the sport.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What was the positive one like?
Encouraging, expressing that he recognized potential in me, making me feel valued, even when I didn't play a lot on on that particular team.
Mm-hmm. Great. Did you have one as well, Kelly?
I did, and it wasn't until recently in a demo somebody mentioned that their earliest coach was their PE teacher. Mm-hmm. And I never thought about it because I always thought about coaches. But I didn't start playing organized sports until like 7th grade. Mm-hmm. So it was really my PE teacher who I had from kindergarten all the way through 5th grade. His name was Mr. Gould, and he had a handlebar mustache. Mm-hmm. And he just made us love every sport that we played. And in elementary school, we had a lot of intramurals. So we were always playing a different sport. And he was just really good at obviously each different, month, however many times he switched the sports. It was all new to us. But I just remember that really started my love of playing every sport. And he never made us feel like this is a good sport for you because you're good at this sport. He made us all feel like we were good. As long as we practiced hard, we'd be good at any sport we wanted to play.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would definitely say he was probably one of my earliest and best coaches.
That's a great example. Actually, it's funny. I have something very similar. And now that I think actually you triggered it because she was my volleyball coach, and she by far was definitely the coach the one coach in my entire life that really embodies this quote. And she was my volleyball teacher in high school, so she was a PE teacher as well. And I got to spend a lot more extra time with her. So it's interesting that you say that, and how PE coaches can have such an impact on kids. And it's funny because this coach, I've been able to withhold a relationship with her even at 27 years old, and I still reach out to her for certain things, and we help each other out with things now, which is really, really neat to look back on. So I think that's kind of just a little bit of a powerful story, just because you can have a relationship with your kids when they're grown, and if they want to be your friends when they're grown, I feel like that's really saying something. Okay, so this our little photo up here with the gas tank. Oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank. What is this called?
The The gauge?
Gauge. Like, wait, what is that called again? The emotional tank gauge up here. We have athletes with an empty tank and athletes with a full tank. So I would like for you guys to give me some examples of, have you ever had a team or a player who seems like they're running on an empty tank, or they're not performing? What are the qualities or the characteristics of a team or a player that you've coached who just is underperforming?
I would say just like lazy, likes to blame other people, maybe not interested in what you're doing. They can be distracting to the other kids that are trying to learn.
Right.
Yeah, unenthusiastic.
Okay.
Discouraged, discouraged, defeated. They seem defeated even before they've even tried.
Yeah, definitely. And then, you know, when you have athletes or a team that's doing really, really well, there's a lot of positivity, and there's just good things and magical things happening on the field. What are the characteristics of athletes and the teams with a full tank?
I always think of them, this is a stupid analogy, but I always think of them as like puppy dogs. Like they're just like so happy to be, so excited to be on the field, and they're just like waiting for you to give them the next instructions. Yeah. And they're just always, hopping around from place to place, and they're just full of energy and
eager, enthusiastic, resilient. They're able to brush things off when,
Yeah, definitely. So you guys definitely nailed the answers. Here they are. Pessimistic, give up more easily, are less coachable. You guys hit a lot of those. Being optimistic, the little puppies being optimistic. These are all full and empty on an empty tank. So how do we do this? How do we fill their tanks so that they're performing at a higher level? So there's things that drain the tank, and there's things that fill the tank, right? And I want you guys, we're going to do a little activity, and I want you guys to we have a kind of a small group today, so we'll do teams of between like 3 and 4. And if you guys can get together, you'll have some paper in front of you, and we're going to do a little brainstorming. So the first thing that I want you guys to brainstorm is tank drainers. So what are some things that are going to drain your athletes' tanks and put them down, like some negative things?
You want us to write them down?
Yeah, I'll give you like 60 seconds to write them down as fast as you can, as many as you can come up with, and then you guys are all going to give one example each for each group. Okay, I don't have a timer, but
that's okay.
off my phone in the other room. Okay, so 60 seconds is up. All right, so I'll have Kelly's group give me your number one answer of a tank drainer. What is your
number one? Okay, we came up with 8 different things, but I will give you our number one that we think people might not have thought of was that they just don't have any friends on the team. Okay.
And then Ruben?
We didn't think of that one, but I would think that would feel lousy. We just get yelled at.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, we're going to brainstorm again. And I want you guys to think of things that are going to fill your athletes' tanks. So I'll give you 60 seconds. Ready, go. Got like 15 more seconds. All right. I'll have Ruben start first. Give me your number one tank filler.
Kelly actually triggered this one with her. We said being appreciated by your teammates.
Awesome. What was yours, Kelly?
I said when the kids get rewarded for things they do at practice.
Perfect.
Or games.
Okay, so now that we have some physical tank fillers and tank drainers, I want you guys to think about when something happens to an athlete or one of your players and they fail or they strike out or they miss the shot, and the way that you react with nonverbal. So this could be anything, or the negative ones in the tank drainers are when you're like throwing your hands up, and that player that just like automatically drains their tank, right? And then something that fills their tank that's a nonverbal would be something like maybe like clapping. So I'm gonna let you guys, we're gonna brainstorm again, and I want you guys to think of some nonverbal actions where it drains the tank. And we'll do 30 seconds this time. Okay, time. All right, so Kelly's team, what was your number one nonverbal tank drainer?
We said just putting your hands up in the air, like, what the heck are you doing?
Yeah, that's an easy one, right?
Mm-hmm.
What about your team, Ruben?
We said dropping your head and looking down at the ground.
Yeah, mine was often a clipboard being thrown, or my coach, this is actually kind of a funny story, even though it's like a bad negative story. When I was playing college softball, my coach was so mad, and I don't even remember what happened. That's how like you just like move on or forget. That's what it should be like. Right? So my coach was so mad that she went and she kicked the bucket as hard as she, like the bucket that holds all the balls, the softballs. And she kicked this bucket as hard as she could, and everyone just gets kind of silent and looks over at her. And she had to get help from the trainer because she thought she broke her toe. She kicked it so hard. So we should probably just practice filling the tank instead of draining the tank with our nonverbal actions. So these are some different ways that we can drain the tank and fill the tank, and you can do it in all sorts of ways. And it's easy to drain the tank because sometimes you don't even know you're doing it, and we get wrapped up into the game, and emotions are high, and these things just come flying out, and we just have to kind of step back and remember that what's going to allow for our player, what are we going to give our players to allow them to play at the highest level. So here are some of the tank drainers and fillers that we have. Criticism and correction, sarcasm, ignoring, nonverbals, and some of the tank fillers, which I'll spend a little bit more time with, is, these are all reasons, this is the how. So how do we fill the emotional tanks of these kids? How are we doing this? And one of those, or I have a couple of examples. So we have truthful and specific praise. And I want you guys to give me an example of a truthful and specific praise that you've given one of your players before.
I remember telling one of my players that brand new to the sport, could not catch a ball to save her life. Just remember telling her how I really thought she was so good at picking up ground balls that fall because that's all she was doing because she couldn't actually catch the ball. So she was my ground ball queen for the day. And it made her feel like $1 million. And that's all we focused on the whole day is picking up ground balls because
that's awesome.
Catch a ball.
What about you, Ruben?
The extra time you're putting in early in the morning to do your lower back exercises is paying off, and the team sure appreciates it.
Yeah. And you can tell when someone's given you, a loaded compliment, right? When someone's just doing it because they have to. So be mindful of that. And when you are giving your players truthful and specific praise, make sure that it's actually genuine. Expressing appreciation. So do you guys have any examples of giving expressed appreciation? I know, Ruben, you had mentioned like appreciating your teammates. Is there an example that one of your teammates or two of your players on your team have given expressed appreciation?
Yeah. Thanks for backing up first base. You saved my error.
Yeah, definitely. What about you, Kelly? Do you have any specific examples of this?
I think just what comes to mind is appreciating hustle, even if they're not going in the right direction or they're not necessarily doing the right play. At least they're really trying to run fast to get to the ball or whichever.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, especially in those backup positions. And I don't know field hockey that well, but I do know that there's something where they have to go out to the left wing or the right wing in order to kind of distract the other team. But it's just like giving that praise for those things that have to become routine so that they do make it routine. And when you praise them, it's easier to make those kinds of things routine. Okay, so listening. So this is my favorite example for listening. Like if you have a friend or a spouse, and you just really need someone to hear you out. You just want them to listen. You don't really want them to give you advice at that moment or talk. You just need someone to hear you out. Have you guys ever experienced that? And then we have nonverbals. So the examples like we gave before. All right, so we're going to move on to a little scenario activity. And before we get into that, there's a question here, and it's, what is the one thing most coaches can do to be more effective? And I'm going to let you guys answer that after we go through this little activity. So positives to criticism. There is a magic ratio for this. And I'm going to let you guys guess the ratio and see if you guys can come up with this ratio. So do we have any guesses?
2 to 1. 2 to 1.
2 to 1? What about you, Kelly?
I'm going to say a little higher. I'm going to say like 3 to 1.
3 to 1? Okay. It is 5 to 1. 5 to 1. So we call this the magic ratio because when we give 5 positives and 1 criticism, then that's where the magic happens. And there's research done in this, and this is valuable with your team, with your relationships, in business. I mean, I'm even thinking like in my own workplace, how this could really benefit a leader or a boss. Okay, so my train of thought here. So the 5 to 1 ratio, that seems kind of like a lot when you actually think about being in practice or a game and you have to give out 5 praises to a player or I mean, even your coaches or a team or in your relationships, giving 5 praises and only 1 criticism, that seems pretty tough, especially at practice when all practice is to get better. So there's a lot of criticizing in practice. So it's going to take a lot of effort to remember this 5 to 1. And something I've actually thought about or I've used before, I've used this kind of tool, is to set a reminder or an alarm on your phone, on your iPhone or smartphone, and just put 5 to 1. And because I know that when you're caught up in practice or you're caught up in the game and those emotions are high, it's really, really easy to forget everything. And I actually do this with my gratefuls for the day. So I thought that it would be a similar, kind of like a similar aspect and a way to remember that 5 to 1 ratio to be positive. I'm even thinking like, you know, if you're coaching high school and you're a teacher as well, if you taught all day and you're dealing with teenagers all day, and then you have to go to practice and coach more teenagers, that can be a long day, and you could probably be a little bit fed up with these kids by that time. But in order to give your team the best version of you as a coach, is to remember that 5 to 1 ratio. So put an alarm on your phone, put a little reminder, and it'll probably do well throughout your day, your day in general. Okay, so back to this question. What is the one thing most coaches can do to be more effective? What do you guys think?
Try to get up to the 5 to 1?
Yeah. Awesome. Nailed it. increase their positives or their positive critiques to criticism. And then at PCA, this is the single most important things that coaches can do to effectively increase their positive negative ratio. Okay, so can I have someone volunteer to read this quote up here by Phil Jackson?
About that time, Jim's book showed up about the 5 to 1 ratio and blah blah
You're
blah
good.
blah.
You're good.
Oh, okay, perfect. I was like, wait, is that that's not the quote? Okay, so this is Phil Jackson. I mean, this is proof enough that 5 to 1 works. If the Bulls won 3 championships in a row, why aren't we using it? So before you watch this clip, I want you guys to think about what might be the most important thing, because that may or may not be one of my questions after watching the video. So let's watch the video. Okay, so what do you guys think the most important thing that Phil Jackson said in this video was?
The critique for his players was like an atomic bomb.
Yes. So an atomic bomb. And I mean, if you know, I'm sure you guys you've played sports or you've seen this in your players. When something bad happens and you get negative feedback or something, you know, something negative happens, it's like all things just like leave the brain and like nothing, you're not thinking clearly anymore, right? So how are our players supposed to move on to the next play or get ready for the next at bat or switch over from offense to defense? And we're going to go through a little scenario again. And so we know that athletes thrive on positive feedback, but your team has been struggling and needs a lot of correction. So as a double goal coach, now that you know what being a double goal coach means, how can you give them the feedback that they need to improve without discouraging them? What do you guys think?
Pick just don't comment on every single thing. Pick what you want to comment on, but you don't have to point out everything that's wrong. That's one idea.
Yeah. Do you have any ideas, Kelly?
I think just try to be positive in their effort, not necessarily the outcome of what they're doing. Just don't look at the results. Just kind of look at them trying to do certain things.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So, sorry, someone walked right in the door.
That's okay.
So I'm actually going to give you some tools that are going to help you with this question. And some of those tools here are, and I'm going to kind of go through them, and I have some fun examples to go with them. So avoiding non-teachable moments. So as an athlete myself, I clearly remember after striking out, it was never a good time. And I really needed that space to clear my thoughts and just take some time to breathe and sit down. And I did not want to talk to anybody for a few moments while I gathered myself so that I could move on and cheer for my teammates. But I did need to like sit down and really and get rid of whatever just happened. So this is a perfect example of non-teachable moments for me specifically, and all players are a little bit different. But if a coach came up to me right after I struck out and told me that maybe I should try this, or, I shouldn't swing at the pitch way over my head, I was probably not going to respond very well. Okay, and then criticize in private. So a lot of kids, and I remember myself as a kid as well, when someone criticizes, I actually remember it more in school. When a teacher picks on a single student out in the classroom, usually that student is going to feel pretty crappy about themselves, and it's embarrassing. So maybe try to criticize in private rather than in front of the entire team. And then ask permission. So what do you guys think that ask permission means? And how would that help to effectively give some feedback to your players?
I think if you just say like, hey, I have a suggestion for you. Would you like to hear it? Maybe?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you have any other ideas, Ruben?
I'll take a guess. You're asking them asking permission to coach them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when asking permission, oftentimes it's like almost like in parenting, even though I don't have kids, but I can do it from the other side of this. But when your mom or your dad is telling you what to do and you don't want to hear it because it's your mom or dad, it's kind of like the same kind of scenario here is, maybe if you ask your player, hey, like Kelly said, is it okay if I give you some feedback on this? And they're making the decision. For some reason, teenagers, when they decide that they're making the decision, they'll be more likely to receive that feedback in a positive way. Okay, so, and then we have use if-then statements. And if-then statements are, but they're result-driven. So an example of this is, if you stay lower, then you're most likely going to field that ground ball. You're going to field the ground ball better. Or if you box out, then you will more likely get the rebound. So one of my questions to you guys is, or raise your hand if you like results when you put in the work. Who likes results when you put in the work? Right. So this if-then statement is really a great way to trigger their minds in a way to show them that if they do this, then they will get this result. And it just makes more sense for them. And then we have a criticism sandwich, which is pretty self-explanatory, and it's you have a positive remark or positive feedback, and then you have the criticism and what you are trying to help them fix, and then another positive remark after. Do you guys have any examples of what you might think a criticism sandwich would be, or maybe it's something that you've used before with your kids?
Way to get your elbow back and in position. Make sure you step towards your target.
Mm-hmm.
I like the way you're following through consistently.
Yeah, that's great. Any ideas, Kelly? Or
I think he gave a good example.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, so now that we have some different ways to give some receivable feedback, I also have some tools that are going to help you get to that positive, that 5-to-1 ratio. And I'm going to have you guys get into groups of 3 or 4, and I want one volunteer in each group to silently kind of read through these 3 different tools, the buddy system, positive charting, and winner's circle. And then I want you to explain what those are to your group. We'll take about, 5 minutes to do this, and then you guys will have a better understanding of what these different tools to help you reach that ratio is. And then I will ask you guys to give an example of how you would introduce these to your teams. So we'll get together for 5 minutes and learn a little bit more about the buddy system, positive charting, and winner's circle. And then we will get back together and go through them again. All right, do you guys want me to just go to the...
Yeah, just you don't have to wait for 5 minutes.
Okay. All right, so now that you guys know exactly what these different tools are, how would you introduce let's start with the buddy system. How would you introduce the buddy system to your team? We'll just take one answer.
I think one way to do it could be first day of practice to assign buddies and explain that throughout practice today you're going to work hard to keep your buddy's emotional tank filled.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so what about positive charting? How would we explain that and introduce that to our team?
I think I would just pick a skill for the day, just pick one, and have all the kids, focus on that skill for the day. And maybe I'd have my clipboard or sticky note or something like that where I could just keep track and little tally marks every time they stay wide when they're running down the field, or every time they have their stick up in the air when they're asking for a pass, or every time they box out on a rebound, whatever it is. Yeah. I would just mark it down, like tally marks on there.
Definitely. Yeah, I really love the positive charting. I think it's one of my favorites just because it's really easy to go through a game and be like, oh, what just happened? All I remembered was the end. And to be able to give that feedback at the end of the game or even at the beginning of practice can really, really amp up your practice the next go around and get that positive energy going for your team. And then our last one, how would you implement a winner's circle with your guys' team?
Well, at the end of practice, I would get the players together and I tell them that we're going to do this on a regular basis. It's called the winner's circle, and whether it's at the end of practice or a game, we're going to go around the circle, and each person's going to point out something that a teammate did that was positive and helped the team. And and then I'll be ready. I'll be ready for to back cleanup for anybody that didn't get mentioned. I'll make sure that they get included.
Awesome. Love it. I really wish that we did winner's circle when I was growing up. I could really use that. Maybe I'll implement it here at my job. All right. So the next principle that we have is the elm tree. Oh my gosh, I cannot talk. Elm tree of mastery.
All right. Thank you. All right. Sorry, I'm just writing down a couple notes here.
Yeah.
All right. So what were you trying? I'm stealing Ruben's question. He always likes to find out what you were trying to work on this time that was different than last time.
I was actually just going to tell you guys before.
Yes, good. Tell us. I meant to ask you before you started, but I didn't.
Yeah. What I was trying to do this time was to obviously not read from the slides as much and just kind of go with the stories and the experience that I have, and so that I would be more natural and not like, okay, like this is how it went and this is how it's going to go, because I want to be able, I wrote down, like the first time I did this, I wrote down my entire presentation because that's just that's just like kind of like my atypical personality is to like write it all out, be super prepared. And this one I was like, okay, I'm going to go through it a couple times without writing it all down and see if I can do this without having like the same exact example. I know there's like some examples that really fit, but respond to what you guys were saying more and being more interactive that way, and not being like, okay, well, they said that, but I'm going to just say what I had in mind.
Yeah.
So that was my main focus on this one.
Okay, good. I did notice that. I did notice that you were definitely more natural, and that was better. Ruben, would you like to share with Paige first, or would you like me to go?
Let me see if I have anything that I want to start with. Paige, I was thinking, I'm looking back to my notes from your first demo. And I definitely thought you, what you said you were trying to do, I agree with Kelly. I thought you did, you were less tied to the slides this time for sure. I thought that was a real strength. I wrote down, and I think I wrote this down because here I was listening to Kelly give you feedback, more time on the scenarios and the tools.
Okay.
And less time on the actual principle. Do you remember her saying that? No?
From the first one?
Yeah, Kelly, do you think you said that? I wrote that down. I wrote that
usually
down.
Say that because the principles section, each of the principles is different than the introduction. So I think I might have said it at the end. When you go through each of the principles, you spend the smallest amount of time on what the principle is, and then the most amount of time on the tools and the scenario. But
okay.
Yeah.
So I guess what I would say is that I didn't see that, and so I want to encourage you, unless Kelly gives you another specific thing to focus in on for your next demo, is that less time on the actual principle,
okay,
and more time on the scenario or scenarios and the tools.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you aware, Paige, of how much time you took there to do that whole section?
Well, when I did it for myself, I was around like 20 minutes, but I don't know what I was on that one.
Yeah, it was about 37 minutes.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I think, can lend itself to what Ruben was talking about. And you were at 22 minutes before you got to the, you weren't even at the Phil Jackson video yet. And you were already at like 23 minutes.
Okay.
Before you did that. So I think just increasing the pace, like you seem like you like to explain things to people. And I think that's a good thing. It means you're prepared and you know what you're talking about. But the coaches that come to our workshops, they want to leave with concrete ideas. What do I do? Like they have a problem. Think of it this way. They have a problem and you are their solution, and you're going to give them lots of tools and you're going to help them solve it. So if you tell them about Phil Jackson and the theories and all this kind of stuff for too long, you're going to lose them before they really get to, all right, this is what I need. Because, I mean, we've been doing, thousands of these workshops, and we get evaluations back, and we ask the trainers, what's the most, I don't know how it's even worded now. I do it a million times. What's the best part of the workshop?
Yeah, like what's the takeaway?
Yeah, and they always write the tools. They usually say like the energy of the presenter and the tools that they can use. So that tells us that that's the part that they really want. And we can't just tell them the tools. They have to actually practice them. So for example, when you did the last activity with the buddy system and the winner circle and positive charting, and asked like, how would you implement that on your team? That's what we're talking about, because they're actually thinking about how they would use it on their team. So if there's a way we can get sort of more of that, I think that's what Ruben was referring to.
Yeah, and here's the other thing I wrote down. This was a note to myself. The PowerPoint doesn't help the trainer focus on the scenario and tools.
No, agreed.
So, Paige, that's a note to myself as we work on the PowerPoint. PowerPoint's an aid, a tool for you as a trainer, and it occurs to me that if we give you a PowerPoint and there's 8 slides on the principle and there's 2 slides on the tools, well, then, it leads you to spend more time on the principle. So that's something for Kelly and I and our team to work on as well. Yeah.
Okay. Did you have anything else, Ruben?
Nope.
Oh, okay. I had a couple things. So I always do my feedback differently. Like the first one is a lot about, just in general.
Yeah.
Which I think we gave you a lot of feedback there. I like to get more specific now because we're getting ready to send you out in front of live people. So a lot of the feedback that I wrote down is taking you from this to going out in front of live people, and just some suggestions, things that I've done at live workshops, things that haven't worked well at live workshops that I've realized through my own mistakes that I just like to pass on. So there's a couple things. I do like the way you brought in more personal stories. I thought that was really a great way to connect us to what you're talking about, which I think is awesome. I think when you had them brainstorm drainers and fillers, I think that was great because I don't think I've ever been asked to just like write down as many as you can of tank drainers. Most of the time people will just ask out loud, but I came up with a list of like 8 things, and I know the slides. I know what's on the slides. And I was like, you know what? It is a drainer when there's no friends. It is a drainer when they're not getting playing time. It is a drainer when they're making mistakes all over the field. Like, so I was writing down things just from my own experience, like what else can drain a kid's tank? And so I thought that was really good. And the fillers, I thought that was really good too. What I would do with that activity from there, instead of having us share our best or like the one that everybody said, because I think the one that the group consensus is too obvious.
Right. That's what I was kind of thinking when I was doing it. I was like, maybe this is enough.
Yeah. So, I mean, with athletes, I'll do this a lot. I make everything a competition a lot of times in my workshops because I think they're athletes, so they like to compete. So sometimes I would do it. I call it category style, where you might have one group read off one at a time, and if the other group has it, they cross it out and see which group can come up with as many that nobody else thought of before. And, they kind of have fun because they're looking at their list and they're like, oh, I already said that one. Oh, yeah, you got that one. Oh, you got that one.
Okay.
So it makes people, challenges them to think about something outside the box that they wouldn't normally think of. So, and again, you can just give them points like, well, that group got 5 points. That group, how many did you get? How many did you get? So it's just another fun way to do it. But I think, again, when I was doing that and you didn't give me the chance to share the ones I wrote down or the ones like the really good ones that we brainstormed, I'm like, oh, that's a bummer. So that would be my one. Also, I wouldn't do 2 back-to-back of the same activity. So you had us brainstorm and write down for the drainers and fillers. I wouldn't have it. I mean, think about it. You're asking them to write down on a piece of paper verbal and nonverbal fillers and drainers. What would be a better way to get them to do that rather than write it down?
To actually do them.
Yeah, you're talking about doing it. I mean, that's what we're talking about. And visual is huge for these coaches.
Okay.
So don't have them write it down. Have them do it. Show me. I want you over here. You, the 3 of you in this group, I want you to show me 3 different tank drainers. One person's going to go like this, one person's going to go like this, and one person's going to slam a clipboard. Okay, you guys over here, this group, come up with 3 different nonverbal tank fillers. And somebody's going to go like this, and somebody's going to go like this, and whatever it is. That is something that will be impactful. The people will probably laugh. I mean, I've done it, and people are like hysterical. But again, don't have us write something that's a nonverbal action. Because I was sitting there thinking, like, how do I write this down?
Yeah, when I finally was like doing it, I was like, this is weird, but I'm just gonna keep going.
Well, and it'll go quicker too, because we want you to pick up your pace. And if you're having us write and wait 30 seconds again, that takes up a lot of time. I think it's great to do it once, but there's a lot of different learners in the room. Okay. And you want to tap into all different learning styles. And writing might be a great way some people learn. Verbal might be another way people learn. Auditory is another way. Visual is another big way. So you want to tap into all those different learning styles. So that was my one suggestion for that. Okay. Also, this slideshow, as Ruben said, the PowerPoint is used as a guide. So if you came up with the one slide and you said, I forget what the slide was. It said, what's the most effective thing, or what's the one thing you can do to make coaches more effective? And then you're like, we're going to go back to that. Like, just delete the slide. Like if it works with your spiel, for lack of a better word, use it, but don't show it and then be like, yeah, we're not going to talk about that yet. Just delete it or hide it, or change the order. There's nothing wrong with changing the order of these slides to match your style. And I do that a lot. Sometimes I go back to doing the standard one. I'm like, oh, is that slide there? Because I don't use it there. I use it in a different spot. You had a really good definition of the magic ratio. I think what we need to focus on more with your workshops, Paige, is we're trying to drive peak performance. So sometimes people will think this filling emotional tanks just makes it fluffy, makes it fun, makes everybody happy. Everybody's going to get a sticker, And the idea of filling emotional tanks is so that your athletes are going to play harder and they're going to stick to it longer and they're going to get peak performance. So I was being picky, but I was writing down what you said. And you said the magic ratio 5 to 1 is where the magic happens. Like that to me sounds like a Disneyland answer.
Yeah.
Where I'd rather have, when you can get closest to a 5-to-1 ratio, that's where the performance is going to change. That's where you're going to see an increase in performance of your athletes. That's something that'll make the coaches perk up. Not just, that's where the magic will happen. You know what I mean? So we want you to be tougher with this because this stuff works.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure the coaches know that the end goal is to win. That's our first goal in being a double goal coach. We don't want to compromise the life lessons to get there.
Okay.
So I thought that was good. Also, when you said, let me see. Oh, I like the reminders on the phone idea. I think that's really cool. You also mentioned like my grateful for the day. If that's something you use, tell us what that is. I'm like, cool, what does that mean? Does she have a little alarm that goes off and she says she's grateful for the day? You know, if you're going to mention something, make it purposeful. Make it something that's going to add value to your workshop. Not just like.
I wasn't sure if that was like okay to like add that. So I just kind of mentioned it and I was like, I'll just mention it as like to show like the way that I use it. Cause I actually use that during my day so that I'm reminded like, okay, like if I'm like really angry at some point in the day and then my thing pops up and it's like, be grateful. You're like, oh, okay, I guess.
Yeah. So use that. I mean, this is something you use and it works for you. I have a reminder on my phone that pops up and it, you know, whatever mood I'm in, and it tells me be grateful. And I'm reminded to be grateful. So as coaches during practice, have a little reminder pop up that says 5-to-1 and that'll trigger it for you. You know, just make it purposeful, make it strong and purposeful because you're teaching, you don't want to just be giving in ideas and facts that don't mean anything. You want them to be meaningful. And if they're not, take them out. So if you can't find a way to make something purposeful, don't use it.
Okay.
And I think that will come. One of the comments I put down was more concise. And more concise just means maybe get to the point a little bit quicker or don't add in so many details. You know a lot of stuff and that's an asset. That's awesome. And I have trouble with that too because obviously I'm a talker. But I've been able to streamline my workshops to where I'm saying less and they're actually getting more out of it.
Okay.
Because if I talk too much, the coaches to think, well, what's important that what she's saying, like, and that's not important.
Clear.
Yeah. Or I'll raise my voice or I'll lower my voice or I'll get quiet or I'll lean in or I'll talk faster or I'll talk slower, you know, and it kind of keeps them like, okay, it's like an orchestra concert, you know, you're getting the crescendo and then you're slowing down and then you're moving up and then they're starting to understand. And these are all little nuances of public speaking and communicating that we're trying to get you to practice. And it's a skill and it's an art.
Yeah.
These workshops are not just about the content. They're actually about communicating them to the coaches. So those are the skills I think for the next one that I want to see you work on more. You've got the content down. You understand it. You've lived it. You've played it. You got it. We want to work on how do you make sure that the coaches in your workshop get it?
Okay.
Because throughout, I mean, would you say that right now, Ruben and I completely understand filling and draining emotional tanks?
For the most part.
Okay.
But I feel like I was kind of like, I don't know, like I was explaining them, but I could just explain, if I just explained them the way that they made sense in my head, it would probably make more sense for them.
Or have them explain it to you.
Okay.
Like there's 2 of us and you're like, yeah, I think you got it. Well, in a room of 50, how are you going to make sure they got it?
Right.
You know, so you've got to make it more about the coaches. So just one quick example. When you did I'm flipping through it in my PowerPoint here. The tools for effective receivable feedback, where there's 6 bullet points: avoid non-teachable moments, criticize in private, ask permission, if-then statements, criticism sandwich. Okay. That is what I explained to the coaches. This is how you're sure that what important knowledge you want to drop on these athletes is actually being heard. Okay. So what I'm going to do, and I put them in groups of 5. And they have their book. I tell them you can use your book if you need to, but you're going to practice this. Okay. So I'm going to ask each of you to take one. And you're going to practice how to use this. And I want you to role play. You are the athlete or the coach or whatever it is. You're the, athlete and coach. And I have them practice giving each other criticism sandwiches and saying an if-then statement to each other and asking permission. They have to all, in their group of 5 or 6, they partner up with somebody. One's the coach, one's the player. Okay. We talk about, criticizing in private. How would you do that? And they actually practice it. And they say, hey, Paige, could you come over here for a second? I have something I want to ask you. Or I have something I want to tell you. And just having them practice it in a work. And I walk around and I listen to them, and some of them they really get into it. And they help each other because they're practicing it in front of their little group. And then the group's like, well, I don't think that's what she means by an if-then statement. How about this instead? So they're teaching each other and hearing the words come out of their mouth so that when they go to practice tomorrow, instead of going, come on, you need to get low on that, they will now say, hey, you know what? I love your positioning. I want you to get lower when you go to pick up the ball. And then, but your release off the whatever was quicker, you know? So they're practicing. That's what we mean by practicing the tools, because if they practice it in the workshop, they're going to use it on the field.
Right.
If they hear it in the workshop, it's going to go in one ear and out the other. And they're going to get back to practice tomorrow and do the same thing they've always done.
Okay.
So does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. That actually really helps, like, clarify what you mean by, like, the tools being used.
Yes.
Have them actually, like, think through it for themselves.
And practice them and try them. And I mean, just, it's more fun for you too, because you don't have to sit there and tell them anything. Just let them come up with it. And it challenges them. Yeah, it challenges them too. Okay. So that would be my biggest suggestion moving forward. Ruben, I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, but that would be for the next, like for the final one, I would love to see you kind of figure out a way to have us work with the tools. And how do I apply those? You're a softball player. I'm a lacrosse coach. How do I apply the softball player coach telling me how to use these tools with my lacrosse player, you know? Because that's what these coaches have to do. They have to translate what you're telling them to their sport. Right. And it's not always easy to do. So have them do it in the workshop where they can challenge and go, is this how this would work in wrestling? Or is this how I'd use this in cross country? I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Okay.
So Kelly, if I actually don't have the PowerPoint in front of me, I can pull it up quickly, but I think the Elm section actually does it have a couple sets of tools also? A couple slides of tools, or is it just one slide of tools?
I'm going to pull it up for you.
There's one.
So it's the scenario first. Your team tends to play tentatively. What can you do? So there's takeaways, which is becoming a noticer, rewarding effort, especially unsuccessful effort, and the mistake ritual.
Yeah. And that's it then?
Yeah.
Okay. So, a possibility for you, Paige, is to do the Elm section next time, and that scenario and those tools, whatever you do with them, have that be the focal point of your. Kelly, would that be okay?
Yeah.
So it's what you emphasize. It's what you spend the most time with us on. We'll role play it. Yeah. Kelly can be split personality. She can be 5 different personalities. I've seen it in one phone call. So I mean, and I can too, actually. So everything else around that, your goal is to be concise. A couple examples. But really make the focal point be the scenario and there's 3 tools, and how are you going to get us to engage those? Are we going to teach them to each other? Are we going to practice them? And Paige, as you prepare for that, if you feel like, wait a minute, this isn't making sense to me, feel free to reach out to either Kelly or me, and we can, but I think that would make your next practice session particularly, beneficial. Okay. To approach it that way.
And just, not that you have to do this, but one of the things that I do every time I do this Elm Tree of Mastery section now, because the very first slide is boom. So many trainers will say, okay, the next workshop, the next principle is the Elm Tree of Mastery. Here, this is what we mean. And they talk. Okay, here's the scoreboard definition of winning. Here's the mastery definition of winning. And they just talk through this slide. And I don't do that anymore. I will say, okay, I want you to think about coaches that you've had, and they fall into 2 categories. One is focusing on the scoreboard as a definition of winning, and one is focusing on mastery. And right away, I'll say, okay, I put it up. Let me show you. Let me show you real quick. Results, effort, here it is. I want you to think about, I get 2 volunteers to come up, and one of them plays the role of the scoreboard focus coach, and one of them plays the role of the mastery focus coach. And I give them, here's the deal, guys. Ruben had to go. He just texted me. Okay. Here's the deal. Here's what we do. Your team is down by 1 point at halftime. Your team is not performing. They're not playing well. You have to motivate your team with a 20-second halftime speech to be able to come out in the second half and play harder. So you, Paige, are the scoreboard focus coach. Okay. All you're focusing on are the results. You're comparing them to the other team, and you're making sure that they know mistakes are not okay. All right. I'm going to give you 20 seconds. Ready? Go. So do it right now. Pretend 20 seconds. Okay. Go ahead. Pretend I'm your team.
All right, guys. So I don't care what you have to do to win this game, but make sure that you make that shot. I don't care if you have to push the people down or push those other girls down, but you have to make that shot so that we can win.
Good. All right. Then I look out at the coaches that are in the room, and like the coaches you were just talking to, like, because I usually do one side of the room, like, okay, Paige, you just talk to your players on one side of the room. And I'll say, how do you feel going into the second half? And they'll say, scared.
Yeah, I was gonna say, okay.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, now this is how I process it. Okay, you're now going to the second half, scared, worried, anxious. Do you know what you have to do? And they're like, yeah, I have to push the girl down. Okay, is that a good life lesson that we want you to learn? No, not really. Okay, so then I go over to the other coach. I'm like, okay, now your job, same thing. You're still down. Your team's underperforming, but you're going to only focus on their effort, what they've learned in the first half, and that mistakes are okay, because we all know mistakes are building blocks. Mistakes are opportunities for knowledge, opportunities for them to learn. All right, so Paige, now pretend you're the other coach, the mastery focused coach. 20-second halftime speech, go.
Okay, so no matter what happens at the end of this, we're all going to be okay. But I just want you guys to take what you've learned and the last practice we had, and take what you guys learned there, because we had an amazing practice. And I want you to take those things and remember those when you're going into the next 20 seconds or the next half.
Right. Good job. So then we all clap for you. Okay. Now I asked the players that you just spoke to, how do you feel going into the second half? And what do you think they would say?
Like they're feeling good. Their players know that no matter what happens, like it's going to be okay, but they're excited to go out there.
Right. Do they know their coach cares about them?
Mm-hmm.
Does the coach know that they've made mistakes, but they're going to work harder this time?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you've got players going into the second half that are relaxed. They have more confidence. They know players care about them. And we know that players will play harder for a coach they care about.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not afraid. So then I just put it out to the whole group and I say, okay, just psychoanalyze these two groups of athletes. Mm-hmm. Which athletes are going to perform better? The ones that were yelled at by the scoreboard focus, win at all cost coach, or the ones that were coached by the mastery coach? Which ones do you think will just performance alone? Which ones are going to perform better?
Mastery.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how I do that slide.
Okay.
And then this slide here, I don't even have to bother.
Mm-hmm.
I can maybe have it going as the person saying, if I'm asking the group, like, yeah, how are they feel? Well, anxiety is lower, self-confidence is higher. I don't repeat it if they've already said it. I just keep going. And then I'll wrap it up by saying, why? Why are the people on this side of the room that were coached by the mastery focused coach halftime speech, why were they so calm? Why are they so confident? Mm-hmm. What were they focusing on? And somebody will ultimately say, well, it's everything they can control. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It gives you feeling control. They're going to work harder. They're going to stick to it longer. So boom, then it's into the scenario. So that's just an example. And again, you don't have to do that, but that's just an example of taking a slide.
Natural and like not so like, okay, ladies and gentlemen, like this is what this is and this is what that is. And
who did most of the talking?
Yeah, and them. And it's just like less pressure on the trainer anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a lot of times I'll say too, like, especially when the scoreboard focus, when at all cost coach is yelling, people are laughing because it's funny. Usually you get like, I always find in a workshop, the people that volunteer are the dramatic people. Nobody's going to volunteer. Like, I usually don't have to pick somebody. I'll be like, somebody come up and be a coach for me. Mm-hmm. Be a win at all costs, scoreboard focus coach. And a bunch of hands go up. And it's usually the most extroverted people in the room.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've had people screaming like, you guys suck. What are you thinking? And so they're done and everybody's kind of laughing.
Yeah.
But then, sometimes I'll say, has anybody ever said anything like that to a team? And then you get hands and be like, yep. I'm like, I have.
Oh, crap.
Why? And I said, why would a coach do that to a team to motivate them? And then you'll get some of the coaches to go, because that's the way they were coached, or they think fear works, or they're trying to wake the team, But when you actually break it down to physiologically, how are those athletes going to perform? Do you want your athletes to perform scared and upset and angry and worried? And, they're focusing on knocking over the other player. That's not a life lesson.
Right.
Or do you want them to be calm, in control? They know what they're going to focus on. They know the coach cares about them. So it's almost like one of those moments where you get the coaches to go, duh. Like, of course. Yeah. And I love it. That's what I call discovery learning, where the coaches are discovering it without you having to tell them.
Okay.
So that's just an example of what we mean by not, taking the principle and having the coaches figure out why it's so important. Just as, again, that was just one example. And then the scenario, the team tends to play tentatively and lets the opponent drive the action. That is a scenario that when you get in a live workshop, you're going to have coaches from all different sports. And I really make sure that when I do, I mean, I don't know what they do in Arizona, but I know where I am, a lot of times it's multi-mixed sports. Before I even start the scenario, I say, okay, what does aggressive play look like in your sport? Because we all say, oh, we want max effort, max effort. What does maximum effort look like in softball? So if I asked you as a coach, what would you expect from your athletes? If you said, guys, I want max effort, I want you to be aggressive. What does that look like in softball specifically?
It would mean like, if like you're an infielder, you need to like go through the ball and finish the play. Or like if you were, I don't know, sometimes there's like ebbs and flows of softball. So
yeah, but I'm just saying, like, I'm getting you to think right now, because people might do that scenario and be like, well, I don't know what an aggressive softball player looks like. Like, how are you tentative in softball or swimming or cross country or like soccer? It seems easy, like field sports where they can run around. But to actually challenge the coaches to think, okay, here's the issue. Your athletes are playing tentatively. And a lot of times as coaches, we say, give max effort, or come on, we want to see you be aggressive. And the athletes have no idea what that looks like. I used to say it all the time. We used to do the cheer, BEAGGRESSIVE, be aggressive. And the players are like, didn't know what that meant. So now our cheer is hustle to ground balls. I want to see you sprint. When the ball goes out of bounds, I want you to be the first one there to sprint. When it's an overshot, I want you to hustle. When somebody's got the ball, you've got their back. Like, I'm giving them specifics. This is what aggressive looks like. This is what effort looks like. So just to get the scenario, when Ruben was saying focus on the scenario, make sure they all understand what the scenario means in their sport.
Okay.
And then when you get to this, the tool, well, I just shifted it. You don't even know what I have on. When you get to the toolkit though, you've got the book that can help you. And page 27 and 28 in the book, we only give you 3, but I think there's 9. No, there's 6. There's 6 total. So, you can even point that out. We've got 6 different solutions for your, non-aggressive people. Let's take a look at what this means. What does it mean to become a noticer? What are you noticing? Rewarding unsuccessful effort. Well, I don't think the effort's unsuccessful. I think the outcome's unsuccessful. So, and again, if you read through the book, like through the chapter, page 25 has a whole thing about effort goals and outcome goals. Now, it's not on the slide, but it's something they have to take home. And I bring that up, because the effort that you're rewarding, you want it to be the goal. The goal is the effort, not the outcome. So there's a video that we have on the Dev Zone where this guy talks about positively reinforcing mistakes. Anything negative that happens on your field, positively reinforce it. And that to me is like rewarding unsuccessful effort, but it makes more sense. We all know what positive reinforcement is. We never positively reinforce negatives. We always positively reinforce positives. So
it's kind of like changing the way that you think instead of saying like, I keep thinking of this one right now because it's like very prominent in my life. But a lot of times we'll say, oh, like, don't worry about this, worry about this instead. And you're like, why are we even worrying about it? It was like more, as you should say, like, focus on this instead of, or focus more on here than here. And like eliminating the negative terms and turning them into positives, or instead of saying like I don't like, I'm going to try not to strike out. You say like, I'm going to try to hit the ball instead.
Right. You can't, I always say too, you can't do a negative.
Yeah.
You can't do a not. You can do it. So give them something to do. And then like the mistake ritual piece, you can spend 5 minutes on mistake rituals. Just talking about why is that important? What does it mean? Why do we have to have a physical sign? Why does that, what does that do to us mentally? What would be a good mistake ritual in your sport? And there's a lot of videos. I actually, the video that's in here is the Curtis Granderson. I have another one that, because once you become a trainer, we have a whole library of videos and you can swap out some of the videos. There's one from Aaron Judge in baseball, and he talks about why he picks up dirt. Like he's constantly picking up dirt and letting it go. And that's his mistake ritual. And it's just it's a good example of that. Yeah. So I just like the fact it's used at the highest. It's used in professional sports. So you can definitely use it with your 8-year-olds, you know? So that's what we're talking about
okay.
making.
No, that's really helpful. Yeah. Yeah. And it just like being able to bring my own experiences is way easier than trying to explain like various like bullet point specific kind of information. So
right. We want you to know the information enough so that you can get the information out of the coaches.
Right.
And sometimes they say something and they don't even know what they're talking about. And you might comment like, that is what we call rewarding unsuccessful effort. Or that is what we mean by feeling emotional.
Yeah.
You know, they don't know what they're saying, but you can bring that into our principles. And that just comes from you knowing the principles inside and out and you knowing the tools inside and out.
Okay.
Because then you can pick it out. And because a lot of coaches say, I love PCA because it gives me a name for what I've already been doing for all these years. And that's value in that, is having a language. Like I've always told the kids, just brush it off, but I've never called it a mistake ritual.
Yeah.
And I've never made it something that the whole team should do. I never made it something like I tell every kid on my team, you all need a mistake ritual. They're 10 years old and every girl on my team has a ritual. And I don't care if it's all the same one. And if you can't think of one, I say, we're going to use Shake It Off. We dance around like Taylor Swift and we sing Shake It Off. And that's it. And I just go like this on the sideline and that's Shake It Off. But, you know, these are things that coaches take away from my workshops. And they're like, I remember that. I remember you said that. I remember you did that. I'm going to use that. I'm going to try it.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Sorry to go on and on and on.
No, it's helpful. I mean, obviously the reason why I'm doing this, I love this stuff, and I'm definitely more like I'm more like an athlete mindset because I haven't coached a ton. But I love, like, I go and I speak to athlete or different softball teams right now. Like I just started this not